Hello my dear friends, welcome to my channel. So far we have discussed about thalamus, different nuclei of the thalamus, and we have discussed so many topics in the neuroanatomy, and we have come to a particular part of the encephalon called as epithalamus, and we are going to see what are the parts of epithalamus and all. And I am sure that you are going to remember every particular part of epithalamus, and I'm sure that you are going to represent in the examination beautifully. Thank you, my dear friends. Thank you for your support. Before exploring this video, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Let's get started and let us discuss about the epithalamus. Now, in the end of this class, you need to remember the parts of epithalamus, and you need to locate the pineal gland, function and connections, habenular trigone, habenular nuclei, and habenular commissure, functions and the connections of epithalamus. These are the things you are going to study, and I'm sure that you are going to remember all these things. Let's get started. Now, coming to this epithalamus. So, what are the parts of epithalamus? So, first, the parts of epithalamus are, first one is the pineal gland. Next, we are going to see the part is the medial and lateral habenular nuclei. And these nuclei are located in a triangular area called as habenular trigone. And then we are going to see the anterior and the posterior paraventricular nuclei, striae medullaris, pineal body, and the posterior commissure. So these are the things we are going to study. So this occupy the caudal roof of the third ventricle. Let us see that. So first thing which we are going to see is the pineal gland. So I am just showing the picture from the posterior view of a brainstem, and here you can identify the cerebellum, and here you can see the medulla oblongata, and this is the medulla oblongata, and this is the pons, and this is the midbrain. So we are observing from the posterior view. So we have removed the one cerebellar peduncle here, and you can identify two pairs of projections over here. Those are nothing but the colliculus, superior colliculus and the inferior colliculus. And medial to this superior colliculus, you can identify this is nothing but a pineal gland. That is a pineal gland. Next, we are going to see this is the triangular area which is exactly located superolateral to this pineal gland is nothing but the habenular trigone, which is consisting of habenular nuclei. Yes, here you can identify this is a closest view of the posterior aspect of the brainstem. Here, as I told you earlier, this is a pineal gland. Superolateral to this pineal gland, we can identify the triangular area called as habenular trigone, consisting of habenular nuclei. So the nuclei which are present towards medially, those are called as medial habenular nuclei, and the nuclei which are present lateral in this trigone, those are nothing but the habenular lateral nuclei of the habenular trigone. And the paraventricular nuclei. So those are divided into two parts, anterior and the posterior paraventricular nuclei. Here I have just shown the red dotted like structures which we have taken a sagittal section of brain, and here you can see the corpus callosum, and here you can identify the fornix. Just below the fornix you can identify this is nothing but the thalamus, and below the thalamus you can identify the hypothalamic sulcus. So here in this particular area what is present is the third ventricle is located. So third ventricle is located. There is two septums are present, septum pellucidum. So the third ventricle, on either side of the third ventricle is nothing but the space. On either side of it, it is lined by the septum, that is called a septum pellucidum. Anterior to that, we can identify anterior paraventricular nuclei, and posteriorly, we can identify the posterior paraventricular nuclei. These are nothing but the posterior paraventricular nuclei. Now, I have shown the pineal gland over here, and below this pineal gland you can identify posterior commissure. Posterior commissure. So whenever you just remember, whenever you listen, the commissure is nothing but the fibers, white matter of the cerebrum. So whenever you see the commissure, I just want to just give a quick review about these commissures. So you can see a video in our channel called as white matter of cerebrum. There we have discussed about different types of fibers which are present in the white matter of cerebrum. So some are association fibers, long association fibers, short association fibers. So the association fibers are the fibers which are connecting the two gyri which are present in the same cerebral hemisphere. So as we know that we are having two cerebral hemispheres. So if the two gyri which are present in the same cerebral hemispheres, those are connected by association fibers. So if the two adjacent gyri are connected, those fibers are called as short association fibers. If the gyri which are away from each other, which are connected by long association fibers. And here, as I told you earlier, the commissural fibers, right and left cerebral hemispheres, are connected by such type of fibers called as commissural fibers. So here we are showing the posterior commissure, that is also a part of epithalamus. Now moving to the brief, in detail description, in detail explanation of this pineal gland. So the pineal body is nothing but it's a part. It is also called as epiphysis cerebri. Epiphysis cerebri, and it is 8 mm in length, 5 mm in width, and pineal stalk in a third ventricle roof. So this is a stalk of pineal gland or pineal body, and it is having a rhesus called as pineal rhesus. Pineal rhesus. Now that is about the pineal body or pineal gland. So we need to remember, we need to study the relations of it. So how to identify that? So superior to this pineal gland or pineal body, we can identify a triangular area. That triangular area is nothing but the habenular trigone. Habenular trigone. And here you can see the habenular commissure. Superior you can identify right and left habenular nuclei. Those are also connected by the fibers called as habenular commissure fibers. Commissure fibers. And here you can identify the third ventricle roof. And this is nothing but the habenular trigone. And below that, what are the other structures are present above the pineal gland? Let us see that. So here is the pineal gland. I have shown the first one which I have shown is nothing but habenular trigone. Okay, then other structures which are present here are, one is the posterior end of the corpus callosum. What is it called as? Splenium. So splenium, posterior end of the splenium, which is present over or superior to this pineal body or pineal gland. Then next one you can identify the tila choroidea. Tila choroidea. Then other structure which is present here superior to this pineal body or pineal gland is called as great cerebral vein of Mayo. Great cerebral vein of Mayo. So these are the superior relations of the pineal gland. So we can see that how to identify this, the great cerebral vein of Mayo, which is draining the venous blood and draining posteriorly and reaching to the straight sinus, and then it drains into the transverse sinus. That is about the great cerebral vein of Mayo. And inferior relation is posterior commissure. Inferior relation is posterior commissure, and we can identify this pineal body or pineal gland which is present superior to this cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. Cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. Now, once again, let us see the superior structures one by one. So this is nothing but the posterior end of corpus callosum called as splenium. Then here you can see the tila choroidea and great cerebral vein of Mayo. And below one is nothing but the posterior commissure. Here you can identify the cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. So these are the superior relations and these are the inferior relations. Now let us see clearly once again the relations, superior relations over here, and habenular commissure, which is present superior laterally, and here you can see the habenular commissure, and below our inferior relations are nothing but the posterior commissure fibers, cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius, and here you can identify the inferior lamina of stalk of a pineal gland or pineal recess. So here in this picture, I just want to show. So this pineal gland, it has two laminae. One is superior laminae and inferior laminae. Superior laminae and the inferior laminae. So superior laminae, which is hanging or which is present above, and inferior laminae, which is projecting posteriorly and reaches to the pineal gland. So this is superior laminae and this is nothing but the inferior laminae. Now moving to the nerve supply of this gland. So we have found the location of the pineal gland or pineal body, and what about the nerve supply of this pineal gland? So the pineal gland is supplied by a nerve called as nervus coronari. That is a nerve which is supplying to the pineal gland and which consists of postganglionic sympathetic fibers. Postganglionic sympathetic fibers which are supplying to the pineal gland. And these are the postganglionic sympathetic fibers are arising from superior cervical sympathetic ganglion. Okay, so that is about the nerve supply of this gland. So in fishes, amphibians and reptiles, the pineal organ is located immediately beneath the dorsal surface of the head. It contains the photoreceptors and nerve cells in these animals. So in fishes only you can identify that. Remember that photoreceptors which are present in the nerve cells, photoreceptors and nerve cells which are present in these animals. The photoreceptors register the changes in the intensity of light upon which depends the output of melatonin. That is called as a tryptamine. It is a tryptamine. It is secreted by this pineal gland. So the melatonin produces clumping of pigment granules of melanin. So the melatonin is producing clumping of pigment granules of melanin in cutaneous melanocytes and eventually influences the light or dark color of the animal. So this, remember my dear friends, so when the fish is receiving more sunlight, if the fish is receiving more sunlight, so it appears dark in color. If the fish is receiving very less sunlight, then that fish appears in very bright in color. So that is because of the photoreceptors and the nerve cells which are present in the pineal gland. Now coming to the mammals. What about mammals? Pineal organ of mammal is however devoid of photoreceptors. So no photoreceptors, no nerve cells are present. It is highly vascular organ without blood-brain barrier. No blood-brain barrier is present. But we can identify two types of cells. One is pinealocytes and astrocytes like neuroglial cells. Okay, so pinealocytes, they appear like, they are called as parenchymatous. So this parenchymatous pinealocytes and astrocytes like neuroglial cells. So these two types of cells can be seen in the mammals, in the pineal gland of mammals. And up to 16 years it is a brain stand. Actually we cannot see any brain, prominent pineal gland before 16 years. So it is richly consisting of calcium and neuroepiphysin which is present in the pineal gland. Then nerve supply, already we have discussed about it. Postganglionic sympathetic fibers, they are coming from the superior cervical ganglion, and the nerve is called as nervus coronari or nervi coronari. So the functions of this pineal gland is, it is a neuroendocrine organ. neuroendocrine. So why it is called as neuroendocrine organ, that we are going to discuss. So it is a prepubertal high phosphorus turnover, and it is rich in melatonin. That we can study on 5-hydroxy indole O-methyl transferase, that you are going to study on it. We can remember another function is it is prepubertal anti-gonadotropic hormone. So it other thing is light melatonin release. And it has an neuroendocrine activity in regulation and modulation of the pituitary and all the endocrine organs, mostly inhibitory in action. So it secretes a hormone called as melatonin, and which inhibits secretion of gonadotropins from hypothalamus. Thus, it is inhibitory effect on reproductive system. So the sexual maturity. So before the teenage, why our genitals doesn't function? Because of this pineal gland secreting hormone called as melatonin. So this melatonin is produced at night, and its production falls during daytime. So melatonin probably holds back the reproductive development until a suitable age has reached by inhibiting the secretion of gonadotropic hormones. So that is the function of pineal body or pineal gland. Now, how it acts actually? Let us see that. This is a flow chart actually. This is a flow chart of light stimuli reaching pineal gland. So from the through the eyes, the light reaches to the retina, the third layer. Then from the retina, it reaches to optic nerve. From the optic nerve to the optic chiasma, and from optic chiasma to the suprachiasmatic nucleus of hypothalamus. Then from here, it is reaching to the reticular formation of midbrain, and then it reaches to the reticulospinal tract, then lateral column of upper thoracic segments of spinal cord, and it is reaching to the T1 spinal nerve, then reaching to the superior cervical sympathetic ganglion, then sympathetic plexus around the internal carotid artery, and it is passing through the carotid canal at the skull base, and then the nervus coronari, which is taking all the sympathetic postganglionic sympathetic fibers, and they are reaching to the pineal gland. That is about the nerve supply and the flow chart of light, how it transmits from the optic nerve and from the retina to the pineal gland. Then what about the habenular nuclei? So the second part which we are going to discuss under the epithalamus is nothing but the habenular nuclei. So this habenular nuclei, which is located superolateral to this pineal gland, which I have shown you earlier, and that habenular trigone, which is consisting of habenular nuclei. What about the connections of this habenular nuclei? So those are afferent connections and efferent connections. So the afferent connections from the septal areas and from the hypothalamus, amygdala, hippocampus. These fibers are passing through the striae medullaris thalami, and some fibers of striae medullaris thalami cross and connect the habenular nuclei, that is called as posterior commissure. What about the efferents? So the efferents are interpeduncular nucleus, and to the dorsal tegmental nucleus, and to the autonomic nervous system of brainstem. So that is about the habenular nuclei. Yes, my dear friends, I have discussed about the habenular trigone and the habenular nuclei which are located in it. So this is nothing but the habenular trigone. So what is the location? Superolateral to this pineal gland. That is called as triangular area. Habenular trigones consisting of habenular nuclei. Those are divided into two groups, lateral and medial habenular nuclei. And these nuclei, right and left habenular trigones, are connected by habenular commissural fibers. So let us discuss about the connections of this habenular nuclei. Now, in this picture, I am showing you the habenular nuclei over here, some inputs and some outputs. So inputs are nothing but the afferent connections. Outputs are called as efferent connections. So sometimes you may get what is confused, that afferents or efferents. So easily you can remember input and output. So input of habenular nuclei. So these green color arrows are showing the inputs. So let us discuss about one by one in a clockwise. So this is nothing but the basal ganglia from the globus pallidus. It is receiving one input. The next one is another input is receiving from the pre-piriform cortex, septal nuclei, and the basal nucleus of myant. It is receiving another input from the hypothalamus. Another input from hypothalamus. So then other input is from reticular formation, and the next other input is from the substantia nigra. Then last input is noradrenergic and serotonergic fibers from the brainstem. So these are the inputs. So what about the outputs? So let us see the outputs. So outputs are from the habenular nuclei to the interpeduncular nucleus. That is called as habenulo-peduncular tract or fasciculus retroflexus that I have shown in the RF. That is nothing but the fasciculus retroflexus. That is one output. Then other output is it is sending fibers to the pineal body or pineal gland. That is called as habenulo-pineal tract. Habenulo-pineal tract, which is present over here. Then what about the function is it is a nodal point for convergence of basic emotional drives. Nodal point for convergence of basic emotional drives. Next one is habenular nuclei influences neurons concerned with the various visceral and endocrine functions. They may be involved in the control of sleep and in regulation of the temperature. So those are the functions of the habenular nuclei. The next one is posterior commissure. The posterior commissure, actually, it is a composite bundle of fibers which connects the medial longitudinal fasciculi, interstitial nuclei, superior colliculus, pretector nucleus, and posterior thalamic nucleus of the two sides. So it crosses the midline by passing through the inferior laminae of the stack of pineal gland that I have shown you in the picture. That is about the posterior commissure. Now try to see the posterior commissure over here. So what I said, it is connected to the inferior laminae of pineal gland. So this is nothing but the posterior commissure, and it is connected to the inferior laminae of pineal gland. So the fibers of this posterior commissure fan out bilaterally and establish demonstrable connections with the pretectal nuclei of posterior commissure, then interstitial nuclei of Castle, and with the nuclei of Darkskevich. Okay, so lesions in the posterior commissure may reduce the consensual pupillary light reflex. Consensual pupillary light reflex, since the bilateral connections between the pretector nucleus may be disturbed. Okay, so the nuclear components and their functions are connected by the posterior commissure are imperfectly known. So it is still some research is going on these connections of posterior commissure. Okay, that is about the posterior commissure. Let us discuss about the stria medullaris thalami. Now coming to the stria medullaris thalami, what about the stria medullaris thalami? So this is SMT or stria medullaris thalamus or thalami is a bundle of fibers lying deep to the tinea thalami along the junction of medial and the superior surface of thalamus. It begins near the anterior pole of the thalamus and runs backwards to reach the habenular region. Many inputs to the habenular nuclei pass through the stria medullaris thalami. That the point I already have explained. And here the approximate location of SMT or stria medullaris thalami. Let us see from the superior view. So this is the transverse section of cerebrum, and here you can see the thalamus over here and the location of the stria medullaris thalamus. Location of stria medullaris thalamus, which is extending from anterior to posterior and reaching to the habenular region. This is the habenular region, and here you can identify this is nothing but the bundle of fibers which are extending from anterior to posterior. This is called as stria medullaris thalami. So that is about the location of this stria medullaris thalamus and the connections of it. So the connections are inputs to this habenular nuclei. They are coming through this SMT or stria medullaris thalami. So that is the end of this epithalamus class. So let us discuss about the hypothalamus in the next class. Till then, see you my dear friends. Bye.